There's a saying, winners become kings, losers start over. An ordinary modern engineer is transported into a novel and becomes a master designer. He only has his wits and prior experience. With a sweep of his hand, as if tapping a cane, he can create a sprawling estate, fully equipped with all conveniences in this medieval age. Our protagonist today is Kim Soo-ho, but in that world, he's just a supporting character known as Lloyd Frontera. Besides his extraordinary design skills, he's also a bona fide capitalist. Everything began a few years ago, when Soo-ho suddenly found himself transported into a novel titled Armor Engineer. While people who transmigrate usually wake up in warm beds with soft blankets, our protagonist woke up face down on hard, stony ground. On top of that, he felt the cold seep in, the wind chilling him to the bone. He'd slept on the road so long that his jaw had twisted to one side, making him look awful. After straightening himself out, Soo-ho regained his composure and sorted through the information. Suddenly someone called out, "Lord Lloyd." He turned around and realized it was Habil Asrahan, an armored engineer, who is also the male lead of this novel. He looked as handsome as in the illustrations. In the novel, Habil became famous across the continent as Swordsman Habil, but he originally came from a small town called Aus Frontera, where he was just an ordinary swordsman. There is also another character, the notorious, decadent baron from Frontera named Lloyd Frontera. It's true there's some luck and misfortune. I was transmigrated into a strange world, and of all things, into the body of a rude young man. It's the sort of unlucky twist you could only get. Habil found him shouting like a madman and looked utterly baffled. The fellow in front of him truly looked extremely unsightly. After a while, the two of them returned to the Duke's mansion. Habil lit the stove to warm the room. He said that all day Lloyd had been drinking himself senseless and smashing things in the tavern. After that, he went home on his own and eventually collapsed in the street. With this situation, tomorrow Lloyd will almost certainly dominate the front-page headlines. Lloyd could only fall silent after hearing that. Truly, the life of a wretch is no more than that. Habil had been dispatched to follow him closely by the Viscount, Lloyd's father, because the Viscount did not want to see his son poor and with a damaged jaw lying about far from home. It was genuinely pathetic. Besides, in this medieval period the weather seemed harsher. Even with the stove burning in the room, Lloyd still felt cold. Habil said he would inform the Viscount about the tavern incident in the morning. He appeared very resolute and had no intention of covering it up. Just as Habil was about to leave the room, Lloyd suddenly called after him. He awkwardly asked Habil about his family. Lloyd's family was currently buried in debt. Habil didn't answer directly, but instead snapped a cutting line. "You probably only just found out, haven't you?" He then coldly shut the door and left. Left alone in the room, Lloyd fell into a pensive mood. In fact, he knew every detail of that novel. In the cramped dormitory last night, he had been trying to finish the final chapter. Therefore, of course, he knew Lloyd's fate like the back of his hand. The reason the Viscount's estate fell into debt was that he and his wife were swindled by a con man, losing everything, and in the end, unable to bear it, they took their own lives together. From then on, Lloyd became a wanderer who drank himself senseless. Eventually, he coughed up blood from alcohol poisoning and died in a pool of his own blood. That's life. Life outside had been hard enough, and being transported to another world with a noble identity wasn't any better. Suddenly, a system popped up and a new notification opened. Your wish has been randomly selected and granted by the Supreme Being. Lloyd didn't understand what it meant, but he was annoyed, so he didn't care. Early the next morning, Lloyd's mother, Mrs. Marbella Frontera, came to see him and asked about what had happened the night before. Lloyd had actually only been transported into this world since last night. So in reality, he had no idea what the previous owner of this body did all day yesterday. Was he supposed to say exactly that last night he was reading a novel when it started acting strange? Mrs. Marbella, her face drawn and tired, urged Lloyd not to cause any more trouble and to go apologize to them. Lloyd was now flustered and embarrassed, not knowing what to do, but thinking that if this body had committed a crime, he should at least go and apologize properly. He stammered that he would go apologize to the innkeeper and the others. Marbella and Habil, upon hearing this, gaped in astonishment as if they had seen a strange phenomenon. A new creature appeared before their eyes. After a while, Lloyd and Habil set off for the tavern to apologize. Seeing Lloyd walking down the street, the busy townspeople passing by quickly scattered away. Even the children, at home, curious, standing and peering through the windows, were already being carried in by their parents, and the doors were shut tight. It seemed that Lloyd's reputation was so notorious that everyone in town was disgusted. Seeing that everyone wanted to avoid him like that, Lloyd wondered and asked Habil why he always followed him. The reason sounded touching, but was actually very cold-hearted. Habil, because he needed to earn his keep, followed the Baron's orders and escorted Lloyd to prevent incidents like the one yesterday. Saying he escorted him was just for show. In truth, it was to protect the townspeople from Lord Lloyd. Lloyd felt that if he wanted to survive in this world, the first step was to erase the image of a scoundrel from everyone's mind. On second thought, if he settled the family's debts, first life might be somewhat better, since after all Lloyd was the heir of the baronial household. Lloyd opened the control panel to check a few things necessary for the plan. But when he looked at the skill board, it really was just 3 dots, none of them usable. Lloyd, annoyed, flailed his arms wildly, causing Habil to regard him with a judging, quite unpleasant expression. Before long, the two of them had arrived at the tavern. Lloyd didn't notice and almost walked past it. Habil suddenly looked at Lloyd with a probing, unreadable stare. Lloyd asked, he just replied as if it were nothing serious. Watching Lloyd open the door and step into the tavern, Habil felt that something had changed since last night, as if his young master had become a different person. Inside, the aftermath of yesterday's wrecking was still evident. Everything was smashed to pieces, nothing left intact. Lloyd went up to the innkeeper, bowed deeply, and kowtowed in apology. The innkeeper was even more horrified by that sight than by the smashing from the previous night. Seeing that a sincere apology wasn't getting through, Lloyd switched to a crude, joking tone, but that didn't work either. If someone already hates you, nothing you do will change that. The innkeeper stammered that he didn't need an apology. Everything was more or less fine for now. But seeing the man's confused, frightened face, Lloyd couldn't help but feel an indescribable emotion. On the way back, Lloyd said that although he had apologized, the innkeeper still wasn't satisfied. It's no wonder, after smashing up a tavern people built with blood, sweat, and tears, who would accept just a simple apology. Lloyd was starting to find life hard. He'd paid off the family's house debt and now had to cover compensation for the tavern. It was truly difficult. On top of that, he couldn't get close to anyone in town. If he didn't pay off the debts now, he wouldn't be able to do anything else. Just as Lloyd was at a loss about how to pay his debts, Habil said something that made his head spin. The innkeeper's mother was still suffering from the cold winds of last winter, and with the extra mess Lloyd had just caused, the innkeeper was truly cursed this year. Come to think of it, the atmosphere in the tavern was indeed gloomy. There was only a tiny stove that couldn't warm the whole place, so that old woman would have a hard time fighting off the cold. Koreans traditionally used hot stones placed under the floor to warm rooms, but in this era, such a thing had not yet been discovered. While walking, Lloyd suddenly stopped. A bold idea flashed into his head. He felt this would surely be a fresh breakthrough in this world. In the Middle Ages, there were no established heating systems, and with the mind and knowledge of an engineer, a perfect design blueprint immediately appeared in Lloyd's head. If successful, he would surely sell it for a fortune, and make people unable to believe that it was the design of the bastard Lloyd Fronterer. Besides, in real life, his field was construction and architectural design. He had even built a building in just a few days while he was in the military. As an engineer, if the plan succeeded, Lloyd could certainly pay off all his debts. With that in mind, he immediately returned to the tavern. That would be the place to launch his first commission. At that moment, the system suddenly popped up a notification that Lloyd's journey was truly beginning. RP had been activated, meaning a relationship point could be accumulated by developing relationships with important characters. Lloyd stared at the system panel, eyes wide. When he saw his RP was 0, he wondered if it was like EXP, since there was no explanation of how to use it. The manual did say RP could be increased by improving key relationships. Lloyd immediately turned to Habil to check. Sure enough, something appeared above his head, a display showing how impressed the character was with Lloyd. Habil's score was currently -30, extremely low. Without hesitation, Lloyd tried to raise his RP right away. Awkward and clumsy as it was, he forced himself to act cute and compliment Habil on how handsome he was. Habil didn't react. His face stayed ice cold and his liking decreased by 1. This method was clearly useless. Lloyd really didn't suit this vibe. After a while, Lloyd and Habil returned to the tavern. Lloyd drafted a full contract with the contractor, nomming himself as both owner and operator, and handed it to the tavern owner. He pledged to make amends for everything he had damaged by covering all reconstruction costs. Looking at a contract presented by a rude delinquent, the tavern owner's eyes were full of judgment and suspicion. The owner's trust in Lloyd was effectively at rock bottom. But to ensure his debt repayment succeeded, Lloyd, reluctant as he was, had no choice but to resort to the bluntest tactic to get the owner to agree. He put on his amiable, trustworthy begging act to persuade the tavern owner. And then, of course, it succeeded perfectly. It was a bit underhanded, but at least it worked. This first contract could be considered a success. Loy emphatically assured the proprietor that he would never regret it. Without waiting long, Loy quickly got to work. He chose the empty space in front of the tavern to carry it out, then began measuring and calculating. After a moment of pensive silence, Habil spoke up and asked, "Is Lloyd creating a new wrongful act by threatening the proprietor and forcing him to sign the contract?" Lloyd fell silent for a moment. He didn't answer. Instead, he calmly asked Habil whether he had ever heard of distorted perception. Loy explained. That distortion clings to Habil's mind when negatives and prejudices are present, because he had done those things before and is now seen that way. Habil countered that it wasn't prejudice, but experience and judgment. Hearing that, Loy shot back. Don't both of those things stem from the past? At that, Habil froze, because it was too true. There was no arguing. He hadn't expected that the rogue young master before him would ever say something like that. Loy went on to say that he would certainly make the tavern owner and his mother smile. As he said it, he jabbed the spade into the ground. He would make them smile no matter what, for their smiles would be the foundation and motivation that would help Loy earn money. And so Loy began to work diligently, digging, shifting, striking hard, then repeating the actions several times. Next came the framing stage. Loy used timber taken from the Duke's storehouse and applied a basic fire-resistant wooden structure, a traditional Eastern timber building method, using fire-resistant wood to form the walls. After that, he applied red clay taken from the riverbank outside. But what Loy didn't expect was that this body's constitution was so frail. After only a little work, he became exhausted, short of breath, and at the slightest exertion had to lie down to rest, to the point that the project dragged on for a whole week and still wasn't finished. Seeing Loy so enthusiastic and dedicated, Habil began to look at his young master differently. He could hardly believe that that foolish Loy actually held the contract with the tavern owner. Looking at the young master, gaunt and wild-eyed, his body limp and trembling, yet still forcing himself to continue working, Habil felt a twinge of compassion. Just as Loy lost his balance, about to topple backward, Habil immediately rushed forward and caught him in time. He took the cane from Loy's hand and asked what he could do to help. Loy said he needed planks about 1 handspan wide and 2 handspans long. Upon hearing this, Habil quickly put his superior skill to use. He raised the cane and performed a few basic yet graceful moves, and immediately produced all the planks needed for the project. Loy watched with his eyes wide in astonishment, raising his hand in admiration. No wonder, the strength of the protagonist, who would later become a master swordsman, resembled a piece of modern technology. When the fat is already in a cat's mouth, you ought to hang on to it. A valuable catch like Habil was something Loy couldn't pass up, so he continued negotiating to enlist his help. He wanted Habil to continue working with him to finish the project. Upon hearing that, Habil felt irritated and grumpy. He had just helped, and instead of being thanked, he was being asked to do more. Who wouldn't be annoyed? Still, with a quick tongue and arguments that sounded unreasonable, but were ultimately very persuasive, Loy successfully persuaded Habil to join his team. So the two of them rolled up their sleeves and threw themselves into the work like busy bees. Some digging, others shoveling and hoeing, others swinging their tools. After dozens of hours, the project Loy had designed was finally completed. He didn't forget to place a label right in the middle of the facade to create his own signature. Now it was time to call the tavern owner over to test the product and to make amends for the trouble Loy had caused. The flames from the stove outside crackled, warming the air inside the small wooden house. The tavern owner and his mother felt extremely pleased. The old woman even felt her stiff joints begin to loosen. The tavern owner was astonished, unable to believe his eyes. After all, everyone here had cause to be surprised. Loy had used a traditional Korean home repair method of floor heating, combined with a room heating structure called gyujun ondan. This technique did not exist in the medieval era. Finally, both the mother and the tavern owner smiled. Loy kept his promise, just as he had said. Habil couldn't believe Loy could do that. Even the young master's manner of speaking and his expression had changed. Habil still couldn't believe this was real. Loy had actually kept his promise to a commoner. But in any case, seeing the smiles of the shop owner and his mother, Habil felt warm inside. Habil's favorable impression of Loy also increased by 2 points. As a result, Loy received 36 RP for a slight improvement in his relationship with a key character. That first contract could be considered a success. Although Loy had spent quite a lot on the pile of wood, it was worth it. After all, this model house was purely for advertising, marketing, for future profit. A few days later, More and more people came to try the heated house that Lloyd had created. The line of people waiting to try it stretched on endlessly. Lloyd also took the opportunity to promote his service. But because his reputation was so notorious, no matter what discounted price he offered, people still couldn't bring themselves to trust it. Just as he was trying to drum up customers for the service, Lloyd's father suddenly appeared. The current favorable impression is, the scene shifts to the Fronterer mansion. Lloyd was sitting, enjoying breakfast with his father. He looked up at him, watching Arcus seriously enjoy his meal. Lloyd thought to himself that he had been trying to avoid running into his father. What if he doesn't let me continue working on those projects? Suddenly Arcus spoke up. Tell me about this. He said sternly, what do you intend to do this time? Lloyd calmly replied as he ate. No need to make a fuss, right? If the shopkeeper wants a heated room, I'll just make one for him. Turn on Loy Mo. Hearing that, he asked on, did you make arrangements with them beforehand? Lloyd, still chewing, answered, looks like you already know everything. Arcus warned sternly, our top priority is protecting the people. Lying to or deceiving them will not be forgiven. Lloyd remained indifferent. It's not that bad, you don't have to worry. As expected, no matter what I do, there will still be people who misunderstand. He stood up calmly. It seems you have nothing more to say. I'll take my leave. Running, dodging, weaving, and slipping away is the best tactic. As Lloyd turned to leave, Arcus spoke up. Is it because of our family's current situation? You surely know what's happening to this household, he said in a low, reassuring voice. Don't worry, we will get through these difficulties soon, so don't stray from what is right. Lloyd turned back, his expression a little sad. I've heard this before. He recalled his father from his old world. Ah, Kim Suho, you'll be fine, don't worry, it's nothing serious. Because of that, he once thought that if he just studied hard, everything would be okay. But Lloyd's face darkened after the memory. It was just a lie, nothing was okay at all. Do I look like someone who will endure suffering for that damned money? He said confidently, don't give up, father, because I will persist with you. Lloyd remembered his former self. A few years ago, I would have said the same thing to my father. He stepped outside, silently calculating. There are now 32 choosing option A and 57 choosing option B. He had already received half of the deposit for the job. Suddenly, two unfamiliar men appeared in front of Lloyd Fronterer. The portly man on the left was the lone shark Meatloaf, and beside him was the lone shark Shiloh. The two of them walked past, which made him wonder. What's going on? They walked past the Baron's son without even saying hello. They walked past the Baron's son without saying a word. Suddenly he realized, could it be that these men were in front of Arcus Fronterer's inner office? Shiloh brazenly sat on the desk. Arcus, how long are you going to keep stalling? Meatloaf added, you only have 5 days left until the deadline. He warned, forcing Arcus to bow his head in submission. If you keep complaining, we won't stop at just this. Lloyd stood outside the door, eavesdropping. Seeing him remain silent, Shiloh raised his voice. Why so quiet? Won't you get money if you sell off items from this mansion? Standing outside the door, Lloyd slowly smiled. Just as his face twisted with secret satisfaction, the scene shifted back to his room. Lloyd looked at the notice board, calculating inwardly. Affinity points, 36. He had gained a few more affinity points after Habil's favorability increased. He wondered, what could he use these points for? Suddenly, the text on the notice board changed. Your skills will be increased when you use your current affinity points. He was surprised. Oh, this damn message actually knows why. Hearing that, the notice board sulked. All right, then. Lloyd chuckled and admitted his fault. Happy now, I won't say that again. After a short download, a power circle suddenly appeared at his feet, scanned his whole body, then announced, detected knowledge of soil mechanics, detected knowledge of hydraulics, detected knowledge of architecture. After a while, the magic circle reached above Lloyd Fronterer's head, detected knowledge of potable water and sewage systems, detected knowledge of steel structural design and building design, detected knowledge of advanced level program design. You have more knowledge than you look, don't you? Hearing that, he snapped angrily. Do you have to say that? I'm a scholarship student in the advanced class, you know. A display appeared after it finished. Skills you can acquire based on your current knowledge. Basic measurement, affinity points required, 15. Basic design, affinity points required, 20. Lloyd read each word seriously. I'm not even sure what these are for. He looked at his current affinity points, then quickly tapped both of the skills listed above. Affinity points, 36. As it turned out, he had enough points to upgrade both skills. Basic measurement. After the announcement, Lloyd's eyes suddenly lit up. He eagerly pushed open the window and looked outside. Whoa, what the heck is that? Lloyd looked at the existing design below and marveled. Is this real? Even without using GPS to measure, I can still estimate just with these eyes. The next skill made him no less pleased: basic design. Lloyd reached out and drew directly on the built-in screen. This is amazing, compared to before when I had to waste so much effort on paper drafts. After testing the two skills, he sat down on the bed, thinking that the work would be much easier from now on. But could Habil carry the workload of many people on the construction site? Lloyd sighed as he remembered the excavator from his previous world, wishing he had the knowledge to create heavy machinery. He wondered whether he could actually build one. A notification like a fairy god appeared and replied, "Oh, that's possible." He was surprised. What, really? A new panel popped up, leaving him open-mouthed. Draw a random fictional item. Use affinity points to draw a fictional item. Various characters, various skills. Choose a fictional noble partner. Lloyd looked at the text and thought it was exactly the kind of in-game ad that tempts you to buy stuff. Suddenly another line appeared on the panel. Draw random fictional item. One draw costs 50 affinity points. Seeing the fee, Lloyd clicked his tongue. What a ripoff. Now he had only one affinity point left. He thought of the 3 types of powerful spirit beasts he had known. Fictional characters, huh? If so, they could be as useful as heavy machinery. Thinking that, Lloyd resolved. He must collect as many affinity points as possible by winning the favor of important characters. The scene returns to the previous room. A hand slams down on the table. Arcus Frontura sat opposite, and Meatloaf made an offer. "If you don't have the money to pay, I'll show you a way to get it." His already repulsive face grew even more cunning. "I know a very good place where you can sell your wife and the servant girls for a good price." Arcus Frontura heard this, and his expression turned serious. "How dare you?" Suddenly a voice rang out. "Do you think you can commit whatever inhuman act you want just because you're the creditor?" Lloyd put a hand on Meatloaf's shoulder from behind. Startled, he shoved him away and cursed, "Who is this brat?" Arcus timidly called Lloyd. On realizing who he was, Meatloaf changed his tone. "Ah, so this is the eldest son with problems in his character. Is that why you're butting in while grown men are talking? If you don't leave here." Lloyd frowned, cutting him off. "Enough. Do you have an invitation? Produce it." They both looked bewildered. "What?" Lloyd explained in a low voice. "The kingdom's law, Clause 3, Article 6. Every noble in the kingdom has the right to defend their rights and interests. Entering a noble's residence without an invitation is equivalent to a criminal offense. It's explicitly stated." Both of them protested. "What the hell are you talking about? I've never heard of such a law." Lloyd half smiled, half sneered. "Oh, you don't know. Would you like to check it with me?" Lloyd called sternly, "Habil." From the doorway, a figure stepped in. Lord Lloyd. Habil Asrahan slowly pushed the door open, revealing himself as a knight. With a cold expression, Lloyd ordered, "Arrest those lawbreakers." Habil received the order, his hand on the sword's hilt. The 2 loan sharks panicked and stammered. "Are you crazy? Do you want to be dragged into court?" Lloyd smiled. "That's exactly why I wanted to go over the terms with you. Let's see which side the court will take." Habil didn't hesitate. He drew his sword and stepped forward. Meatloaf and Shiloh panicked. They bolted, but not before shouting insults. "Do you think you have the right to do that? You'll regret it." With a loud thud, the 2 rushed out the door, leaving Lloyd standing alone. Lloyd Frontura waved his hand, smiling smugly. "Tusk idiots." At that moment, Arcus Frontura finally spoke up. He asked in a panic, "Lloyd, Habil, what did you just do? That won't make things any better." Suddenly, Lloyd stepped forward and set a bag down on the table. He said softly, "I was going to give you the deposit I collected, but this should be enough for this month." Arcus couldn't believe his eyes, but still protested. "The deposit is money you took from people? How can we use that?" Habil stood behind him and reassured, "Lord Arcus, please don't worry. I will supervise Count Lloyd to ensure he keeps his promises to everyone." Seeing Habil's serious expression, he silently accepted. Noticing Habil's look, Lloyd understood that he trusted him. He took the opportunity to bow and said, "We request permission to leave." The 2 quickly left Arcus Frontura's office. On the road, Habil asked suspiciously, "How do you know that law? I thought you were indifferent to everything." Lloyd scowled, annoyed, but said nothing. "I found it, okay? I really found it," from Habil in the novel. He remembered the scene of Habil Asrahan, standing in the rain after Lloyd's parents had died. 2 loan sharks wanted to dig up their graves to find valuables and sell them. That time, Habil cited the kingdom's law, Article 6, Clause 3. Every noble in the kingdom has the right to defend their rights and interests. He calmly cut off the heads of those 2 pieces of scum. Afterwards, when Habil was taken to court, he was found not guilty. Lloyd smirked inwardly. Remembering the novel's contents was truly advantageous. He stroked his chin in anticipation. As predicted, a notification suddenly appeared. "Notice, Arcus Frontura's favor toward you has increased by 6 points. You have received 60 affinity points for strengthening your relationship with an important character. Your affinity is now 61. Lloyd grinned with satisfaction. I predicted that like a god. A fictional character, I'm here. Under the moonlight filtering through the tree branches, Lloyd stood in the training ground. There probably isn't anyone here at this hour. Lloyd called out and a notification immediately appeared. Random draw. Randomly draw fictional creatures. Begin. One draw costs 50 affinity points. He immediately clicked the start button. Immediately after, a blue light unexpectedly appeared. The clatter from the interlocking tiles grew more intense. They formed a circle and began to connect to one another. Lloyd gaped as he watched it operate. Oh wow, that's magic. The magic circle completed, and a fully formed version appeared. Looking at the result, he sighed in exasperation. So small. The circles collided with each other, creating a cacophony of unpleasant noise. Suddenly, something began to emerge from the center of the circle. To their surprise, a hamster poked its head out. Squeak. Lloyd stared at the finished product, speechless. It climbed all the way out and fell to the ground. Thud, its whole body was covered in dust. It looked up at him, while Lloyd stood motionless. Before the hamster, Lloyd clicked his tongue in scorn. What a failure. Po Dong was hurt by the remark and teared up. The hamster staggered after him, murmuring a few words. Po Dong, Po Dong. He walked on with a displeased expression, saying, What? You're not a failure. You can do a lot. He stopped and asked, like pellet bullets. I don't need something like that, he waved dismissively. Po Dong puffed and puffed. Really? Then show me, perform it for me. The little hamster puffed out its cheeks, then spat out 2 objects along with its drool. Lloyd looked disgusted. So filthy. He glanced at the paper's contents and read, User Manual for Po Dong. Lloyd looked at the hamster wiping its drool in front of him and continued reading. Po Dong is an adorable hamster. Care for it with love. He poured the red and green seeds from the bag into his hand for Po Dong. Sunflower seeds can alter Po Dong's size. 2 illustrative images. Red sunflower seed. If Po Dong eats it, he will grow large and the effect lasts 12 hours. A green sunflower seed. If Po Dong eats it, he'll shrink. Give Po Dong the green seed before the red seed's effect expires. Lloyd grimaced as he continued reading. The price for a 2-colored sunflower seed set is 1 intimacy point. He looked at Po Dong with a weary expression. Can you grow to the size of a human? Po Dong squeaked. Po Dong. I should test it myself. He took a red sunflower seed from his pocket and placed it in Po Dong's mouth. A digging hamster would be useful. If it grows to human size, that would be very handy. Po Dong took the seed and chewed voraciously. Suddenly, Po Dong's body began to enlarge, astonishing Lloyd. The transformation was so rapid that its body slammed straight into Lloyd's face. Lloyd was hurled away by Po Dong's bulk. Oof, thud. He looked up in a panic. Oh my God. Lloyd stared at Po Dong's huge, fearsome body. What is this? 5 meters? No, it's at least 10 meters. Po Dong bent down and looked at him with contempt. Look at it, so arrogant. Suddenly a notification popped up. Po Dong's skill. Digging level 1. The next skill was displayed. Level 2, ground flattening. Po Dong used its massive body to roll once, flattening the ground. Finally, level 1, cheek pouch. Po Dong held something in its mouth and then spat it out. Po Dong spat out a huge rock. It fell straight down in front of Lloyd, spraying him with a mess of saliva. Lloyd didn't mind, he was even delighted. Perfect. The heavy machinery problem was solved. Having finished preparing everything, he returned to the mansion to think things over. But if I suddenly showed up with something that wonderful, people would be suspicious, wouldn't they? Lloyd stroked the sleeping Po Dong and hatched a plan. Fine, I'll keep the summoning book on me. Then I'll exclaim, am I a genius summoner? Oh my, why am I so clever? I'd go insane. After thinking it through, he confidently set off with his plan, time to deal with the labor for the next large-scale projects. Dawn was breaking. In front of the Frontero estate, Lloyd stood before the men and gave orders. Repeat after me, safety comes first. The men, weakly clutching their tools, replied, safety comes first. 30 soldiers of Viscount Frontero. Seeing how sleepy they looked, Lloyd was helpless and almost laughed. They sounded like soldiers who did no work but still received pay. If the Viscount is so deeply in debt, why hasn't he cut them off first? He composed himself and smirked. Fine, there will be no extra labor wages paid. Being able to mobilize manpower is truly a relief. Lloyd turned and shouted, listen up. You are soldiers. The place you should be is in the army. He slung the spade over his shoulder and said sternly, but what's the army's primary duty? It's labor. When we were in the army, we did more digging and weeding than training. Lloyd pointed to the side. Do you see that pile of dirt over there? That's the sandy patch I've been digging up all night. The image of Po Dong diligently digging sprang to his mind. In fact, that heap had been dug by Po Dong in 30 minutes. Loy enthusiastically outlined the plan. Our first important task is to revive this land by building a heated shelter for the local people. To do that, you'll first need to move the soil and rocks to the construction site. On hearing this, everyone wore looks of displeasure, as if they disagreed. He remained unfazed. Everything was still going according to plan. As he'd predicted, he knew they would react that way. Suddenly, someone stepped forward and called out from behind, "Young Master Loy." Newman Frontera frowned and asked, "What did you just order my soldiers to do?" The chief knight Baron Frontera was Newman. Loy smiled smugly. He had expected this man to show up. The images of the three key figures from the novel flashed through his mind. There were three knights on this land. That one was Newman. Beneath him was Bayan, and the novel's protagonist, Habulus Rehan. Loy stood motionless, recalling the story. In the opening of the novel, both Bayan and Habil remained loyal until the land fell. But this man was actually the first to betray and abandon the Baron. He looked at his face and his youthful double chin and remembered. Newman had sold information about the Baron to the swindlers. He was also heavily in debt. Loy's face showed obvious malice. This isn't right at all. How could this guy be the chief knight? He turned around and shot back. "What do you think we're doing, Knight Newman?" Newman Frontera's gaze was stern. "I cannot believe you would order soldiers to do such dirty work. As chief knight, I cannot accept it." Loy propped his chin on the shovel handle, looking pleased, muttering curses under his breath. "Damn it, I'm trying to earn money to pay my debts. But I already have the Baron's permission." He paid it no mind and brought up the old issue. "I don't know how you deceived the Lord, but when you look at the young master's past," Newman Frontera declared firmly, "I believe you are using the troops for personal purposes. Am I wrong?" Loy remained indifferent. He smiled and did not deny it. "Not at all, you're right." Then he suddenly grew serious, steering the conversation toward the fact that he'd been beat. Newman Frontera was so angry that veins stood out across his face. Look at him, such weak resolve. If he played online games, he'd be scared to death. Loy slowly lifted the shovel that had been stuck in the ground. "Then let me." He suddenly swung the shovel, striking at Newman Frontera. The soldiers who witnessed it all stood agape. He winced as he blocked the blow. Loy smiled confidently after that action. Newman Frontera's whole body trembled as he spoke. He was so angry he no longer looked like a knight. "You brat, did you just try to sully a knight's reputation?" He muttered under his breath, the incompetent, useless son of a baron on the verge of bankruptcy. Of course he wouldn't dare say that out loud. Loy smirked, putting a hand to his ear as if he couldn't hear. "What? What did you just say? You want to set aside your rank and fight?" He deftly twirled the shovel in his hand. He then pointed it straight at Newman Frontera's face. "All right, let's try it once. Come on, let's have a one-on-one duel." He kept a hard expression, jaw clenched, and retorted, "You'll regret this, you idiot." In front of the Frontera mansion, a voice called out, "You're going to duel Sir Newman in a month," Habulus Rehan asked sternly. "Are you confident you'll win?" Loy grinned in a teasing tone. "What, are you stupid? Of course not." He pointed at his head and sneered, making Habil so angry he wanted to draw his sword on the spot. "My opponent is a knight known as the Magic Heart and an expert swordsman, and I'm just a lazy man. How could I possibly face him? Are you asking without thinking? Do you even use your brain?" He calmed down and slowly loosened his grip on the sword. "Phew, I almost cut him." Watching him pick his nose, Habulus Rehan couldn't help thinking. It's unbelievable that he suddenly flung mud at Sir Newman and even challenged him to a duel, even though he wanted to go back to being a scoundrel. Lloyd kept picking his nose, paying no attention to Habil. To set up a scheme to make money like that, he had asked for the Baron's favor, then started an argument and stepped aside. At that point, he appointed Sir Bayan as the substitute overseer and commander of the construction battalion. Lloyd pulled a yellow thing from his nose, which disgusted Habulus Rehan. But he still couldn't believe that Lloyd lacked confidence about the duel, out of nowhere. It was maddening. He wanted to tear him apart. Lloyd took a handkerchief from his pocket to wipe his hands, then said, "Well then, Sir Habil, there's something you need to do." He smiled and asked, "Teach me how to use a sword." Habulus Rehan said flatly, "I don't want to." Lloyd pulled a sour face. "Huh, why's that?" Habil explained seriously, "First, my duty is to watch over you, young Master Lloyd." He delivered the criticism with a face devoid of emotion. "Second, young Master Lloyd is a scoundrel. If a scoundrel learns swordsmanship, he'll be even more dangerous to those around him." Lloyd snapped back indignantly, "Can't you at least speak nicely?" Then he gradually realized, "So that's how it is. You don't want to teach me, do you?" He made a serious offer. "If you teach me swordsmanship, how about I cure your insomnia in return?" Habulus Rehan was astonished. How did he know about that? Lloyd smiled confidently, as if he could read his mind. "Because it's in the novel, and I also know what's causing your insomnia." He recalled the information. In the novel Blood and Steel Knights, knight ranks are divided into 4 tiers from highest to lowest. Master Swordsman, Senior Swordsmanship Expert, Intermediate Swordsmanship Expert, and Junior Swordsmanship Expert. Habil is currently a Senior Swordsmanship Expert and will soon become a Master. The cause of his insomnia is an exceptionally sensitive nervous system, known as Master Swordsman Syndrome. Lloyd said wearily, "Of course, that information wouldn't reach this countryside. How could this idiot know about it? Will you agree to the deal or not? Pretending you don't know is useless. Your face clearly shows the insomnia." Habil sighed, resigned, then accepted. "All right, I'll give it a try." Lloyd smiled smugly. "Oh, really? Don't go easy on me." Habil replied disdainfully, "Of course. I mean, you'll surely give up. I've tried countless methods to cure my insomnia: cognitive behavioral therapy, herbal remedies, aromatherapy, physical training, traditional medicine, and so on." After talking for a while about this and that, Habil rolled over and fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. Lloyd felt triumphant when he saw him sleeping. "Heh, that absurd bastard, I didn't know how to cure your insomnia." He muttered some kind of formula. He dozed off for the first time while reading a magic technique. Am I right? Magic technique number 18. Reading aloud a book on reinforced concrete that makes people sleepy. Lloyd fired up, grinned wickedly. "Now all your sword skills will be mine." The scene shifts to the forest. Habil Israhan ordered, "Run 50 laps right away." Lloyd stood stunned, motionless for a moment. Then he turned and ran anyway. Seeing him dash off without complaining, Habil asked suspiciously. He just ran off without complaining. He stood at attention, watching Lloyd run. Thud, thud. Gradually he completed half a lap. Then a full lap. Lloyd panted in complaint. "Huff, huff. I hate doing this. Teach me some techniques." Habil didn't answer. He just watched in silence. "One more lap," Lloyd taunted. "You don't expect much from this, do you? You thought I'd give up and start screaming, right?" Habil continued, using the tree's ear, and he ran another lap. Lloyd provoked, "And then you'll say, 'You're not cut out for this,' and ignore me, right?" Hearing that, Habil twitched slightly. That hit a nerve. Lloyd smiled in satisfaction and continued, "Ha ha, what will you do now? I'll run until it's over." Suddenly a notification popped up. Passive skill, being an annoying guy, has increased to level 4. Anyone who sees you will think you're an idiot and will want to hit you. Lloyd read it angrily. "I don't need a skill like that. Get lost." Despite that, he kept running. Pant, pant. Lloyd was drenched in sweat, each step growing heavier. "Actually, I'm really tired. Saying I'm not tired would be a lie. But this is nothing compared to when I was still in Korea." He remembered the dark period in his previous life. No family warmth, waking every morning to a cramped, rented room. Day after day, Lloyd carried bricks up to the 4th floor of the villas, and then piled boxes onto trucks all through the night. The image of him laboring painfully, just to avoid starving, always flashed through his mind. He constantly nurtured a wish that one day things would get better. Suddenly, Kim Suho noticed a faint light ahead. "Keep going, Kim Suho, you'll get better." He stepped forward and reached out to touch the beam of light. "You're doing very well. You've met the standard." Kim Suho stretched his hand toward the light before him, just a little more. But then he realized something that plunged him into despair. The light that had seemed right in front of him grew increasingly distant. Kim Suho fell to his knees in regret. Back with Lloyd Frontera, he persisted in running laps around the training ground. Compared to that pain and despair, the present moment meant nothing. Lloyd smiled, savoring every second. Habilas Rahan stood silently, watching Lloyd's efforts. He thought to himself, "If you truly want to learn, I'll teach you my sword technique." Lloyd's running form, though his body was nearly at its limit, lingered in Habil's gaze. A notification appeared. "Habil's favorable impression of you increased by 1. Habil's favorable impression of you. You received 18 affinity points, because your relationship with an important character improved slightly. Current affinity score, 29. It was getting dark. In front of the Frontera Manor, Arcus Frontera was speaking with Newman Frontera. How could he be so rude to someone who had protected his family for 5 generations? His face revealed clear disappointment. "I had thought that by now he would have understood. It seems I was mistaken." Arcus spoke solemnly about the current situation. Ethically, he could not stop this duel. But after all, the boy is the future heir of this land, so don't discipline him to the point of serious injury. Just make him understand. Newman bowed respectfully. "I will obey." But deep inside, he smiled slyly. Whether he would actually do that for the entire duel was uncertain. Stepping out of Arcus's study, Newman privately calculated. He would defeat that arrogant brat and kill him, if the Marquis made a fuss about it. Then, he sneered, imagining killing both the brat and the Marquis and staging it as a suicide. As planned, he would leave this village and move somewhere larger. Newman chuckled inwardly. Thanks to that foolish young master, the plan would succeed sooner than expected. 1 month later, in front of the Frontier Manor, Lloyd and Newman stood facing each other before the crowd. Lloyd's parents and the two nearby knights were extremely worried. Newman, sword in hand, asked, "You're ready for this match, aren't you?" Lloyd flicked his left foot and pried up the shovel that was stuck in the ground, arrogantly resting it on his shoulder. "Of course." He smiled confidently. "I'm ready to defeat you." Everyone stared at the weapon in his hand in bewilderment. "What is that? A shovel? Is he planning to fight Sir Newman with that?" Newman was furious and at a loss for words. Above them, Habil looked down, thinking about the shovel's past. A shovel made of steel that Lloyd had asked the blacksmith to forge. Arcus clutched his head and criticized. "Is that brat just messing around?" Habil silently dismissed that notion. Messing around? Probably not, if you consider what he's done since last month. He recalled the early mornings spent guiding Lloyd through basic training, without a single complaint, then going to the work sites to teach the village engineers about heating systems. After that, forging swords late into the night before finally sleeping. That period was certainly not the behavior of someone who only knows how to play around. "I'm convinced young Master Lloyd is very serious." After a brief wait, Arcus announced, "Then, right now, the match between Lloyd and Sir Newman will begin." Upon hearing the announcement, Newman immediately assumed a defensive stance. As for Lloyd, though serious, he still wore a mocking expression as he took his stance. Seeing Lloyd's attack stance, Habil wondered what's wrong with that posture. Newman lunged forward in anger. "You still dare mock me now?" Lloyd calmly held the shovel out in front of him and immediately blocked Newman's attack. Habil and Arcus were astonished. Seeing that, Newman quickly prepared his next move. "You won't be so lucky a second time." However, the next strike was still easily blocked by Lloyd. Habil was even more astonished. The movements were unusual but effective, like a technique used in real combat. His swordsmanship looked as if it had been honed for years. Newman panicked after 2 failed attacks. Lloyd saw him widen his eyes and smirked. "Why are you so surprised? Every man in South Korea can do that." He remembered his time in the military. This is a modern close-quarters technique, a bayonet-style assault. Lloyd took the opportunity to lunge forward. "Actually, this spade of mine can do a lot of things." As he parried Newman Frontier's blow, he listed the weapon's uses. "I can use the spade's blade as a shield, and then strike straight at Newman's face. The original cutting force is inherently strong." Suddenly, he thrust the spade into the ground. "If I do it like this." Lloyd stood on the spade's handle and hopped around. "I can ride it like a pogo stick." "Ha ha, bring it on." Habil Asrahan, seeing this, hesitated. Is he really just joking around? But Lloyd's confident smile in his eyes made Habil reconsider. Or maybe not. Newman angrily rushed forward. Lloyd immediately took a defensive stance. "Newman, the first weapon I've readied to defeat you is this spade." He applied his special technique, forcing his opponent to retreat. "The second is the basic sword technique I learned from Habil." Newman grimaced as he braced himself, a doubt rising in his mind. Wasn't he just a worthless drunk? How could he be this strong? Finally, he activated the skill from the system panel. The shovel's handle was enveloped in mana. And thirdly, it had synchronized with the level 1 digging skill toolkit. Body and soul merged with the shovel. The level of assimilation between him and the shovel would increase. He remembered his days of toil. During the training, Habil's favorable impression increased by 1. Lloyd's parents standing on the upper floor were also astonished. During the training, Habil's favorable impression increased by 1. Lloyd's parents standing on the upper floor were also astonished. That time was the first time the Viscount and his lady had seen their son's enthusiasm in their lives. It added 2 and then 3. Affection points accumulated like that. After that, a notification appeared. Affection points recorded, 97. "Do you want to learn the digging skill? Affection points required, 40. "Yes." He wearily wiped his sweat, read each word, and realized he had learned a rather interesting skill. Back in the present, Lloyd and Newman were cautiously on guard. Suddenly, Newman inhaled deeply. Newman thought of one last option and then stood up confidently. "I have no other choice. I don't think this is necessary to deal with a normal person." A stream of energy began to appear along the sword. In the stands, Habil exclaimed in surprise. The flow of mana throughout Newman's body had begun to move. Mana was gradually being drawn toward the front of his chest. Lloyd looked on suspiciously. He was in a state of depletion. All the mana in Newman's body gathered in one place, the magic heart. Suddenly he raised his sword and confidently said, "This is the real confrontation, you little brat." Lloyd heard it but remained silent. Suddenly, Newman lunged forward at extreme speed. Habil calculated in horror. Over the past 10 years, for someone lacking ability, even an ordinary person would need at least 5 years to develop the magic heart. It was impossible that young Master Lloyd could have blocked such a sword strike. In short, Newman immediately slashed straight down at his shoulder. Lloyd did not flinch and immediately raised the shovel. Newman gradually lost awareness, simply burying his face as he swung down. "You idiot, I'll crush that shovel and smash your skull." Marbella Frontera, together with Arcus Frontera, were utterly terrified by the sight, but unexpectedly, Lloyd still managed to block the magic heart strike. Newman was so astonished that his eyes widened. His whole body hit the ground, and he struggled to remain standing. What? It felt like all the strength in his body was fading. Lloyd grinned slyly, thinking to himself, "The fourth technique I prepared for you is this." He remembered Habil Asrahan, the magical technique that had made the strongest man in the novel. The mana from Newman's body was drawn along the sword and through Lloyd. The core Asrahan technique. Newman panicked, trying to yank the sword out of the shovel. "Ah, my magic is being absorbed." Lloyd didn't wait for him to recover and charged forward, landing a blow to his face that left it distorted. In midair, a tooth flew out, glittering. Newman looked up, puzzled. What is that? Is it my tooth?" He took the opportunity to land another blow to the chin. Then he raised the shovel high, his face expressionless. Another strike to the nape of Newman's neck made his eyes nearly pop out of their sockets. Lloyd's blow left him sprawling on the ground. Everyone around was so astonished their mouths dropped open, and their eyes widened. Arcus in the stands was equally stunned to see the region's famed knight knocked out by Lloyd. Arcus in the stands was equally stunned. The crowd murmured, "What? Young Master Lloyd won? That's impossible. Huh, how strange." Arcus Frontera stammered as he announced, "I declare Lloyd Frontera the winner of the match." Newman Frontera, stunned at the news, asked, "What did you just say? How could a knight like me lose to that scumbag?" Lloyd stepped forward to face him. "You heard me, didn't you? I won the match." Lloyd warned sternly, "Tell me, how would you like to be beaten?" He raised the shovel high. The time for the long-awaited punishment has come. Newman panicked, and Arcus, seeing his actions, shouted, "What are you doing, Lloyd? The match is over." Lloyd paid him no mind and rained blows down on the man clutching his head on the ground. "I'll start right here. Oof. Ouch." Arcus, turning from panic to anger, shouted at Lloyd. Seeing him strike repeatedly, people rushed over to stop him. "Please, sir, stop. Young master, the match is already over." Bay Intense said, "Has he lost his mind?" Habil Asrahan brooded, "Has he lost his mind?" Tusk. Lloyd gradually calmed down. "Ah, fine, let go of me." He put his hands on his hips and let out a puffing exhale. Then he swung again, striking Newman. The two soldiers were helpless. "Young master, please stop." Habil looked closely and realized Lloyd was hitting spots. That didn't cause too much pain. That calmness caught Habil's attention, a calm expression as if he'd predicted what was about to happen. It seemed Lloyd knew everything in advance. 15 days before the match, Lloyd arrogantly demanded, "Now teach me the Asrahan mind technique." Seeing Habil's surprised expression, he snapped, "Why that look? It's not like I'm asking you to teach something evil like how to steal." Lloyd imagined, "Unlike the thread-pulling energy, it can draw in surrounding energy and convert it into your own energy, right?" Habil asked doubtfully, "Young master, how do you know that?" He thought to himself, "Isn't this a technique I've never revealed to anyone and haven't even completed?" Lloyd explained, poker-faced, "Remember when I helped you sleep? You mentioned it while talking in your sleep." His brazenness could drive nails. Habil calculated skeptically. At this moment his face seemed like an iron mask. Probably just imagination, but aside from the sleep-talking, there was no other way Lloyd could have known about a technique that didn't even exist yet. He silently accepted the explanation, but still refused. "I'm sorry, I can't teach it to you. Is that technique still unfinished?" Lloyd smiled enigmatically. "If I can perfect it, will you teach me?" Habil was slightly doubtful, but still nodded. "If what you say is true, what was with that confidence?" Lloyd planted his sword in the ground and began to explain. "Listen," he proceeded to give a serious explanation of how it operates. "Your magic heart may be absorbing external energy in its own way. The right hand is the magic heart, the left hand is the external energy." Lloyd clenched his right hand and pushed with his left, and as a result, boom, it gets flung outward, from what I can tell. From the magic heart's perspective, the external energy is a foreign element, right? He continued, "Right now the root portion is changing. Energy absorbed from the outside will no longer mix with the magic heart. So separate them, rotate them, and then recombine." According to the description, the two spheres in the imagination gradually merge, like an auxiliary engine beside the main engine. They are one, yet at the same time distinct. "Now tell me, isn't that wonderful?" Habil was stunned. "I'm sure that could. I don't know what you mean by engine, but how did you, young master?" Lloyd, wearing an iron mask, replied, "Hey, I was just imagining. It actually works. That's great." He clapped his hands. Habil frowned slightly, that expression again. From what Lloyd said, he must know something. Habil followed the instructions. His body gradually merged with the external energy, and then he was able to complete the Asrahan mind technique that had long preoccupied him. After the first attempt, the number of circles he created had reached 3. With more practice, he could get 4 or 5. Suddenly, a notification appeared. Habil's favorable impression of you increased by 5. Lloyd muttered irritably, "What? How long have you been teaching me the magic heart technique? I don't need that. I only want to learn the absorption part. I don't need ambient energy, only the energy I touch." Back in the present, Lloyd was still furiously striking Newman Frontera. Young Master Lloyd had that ability, so I had predicted he would defeat Sir Newman, and he did so resoundingly. Arcus Frontera was still angrily shouting, "Lloyd, I told you to stop. I cannot allow you to sully the reputation of a knight any further." Lloyd finally stopped and looked up. Panting, he said, "Are you talking about the reputation of a knight?" He pointed to the table in front of Arcus. "Please, Father, look under the tablecloth before you decide whether those words truly befit Sir Newman." Arcus quickly flipped the tablecloth. Letters. He pulled one out, read it, and then froze. "What is this?" As if he already knew everything, Lloyd calmly explained, "Towards is the one who caused trouble for the Viscount's property. This is the letter that bastard sent to Sir Newman. The state of the domain, what the Viscount likes and dislikes, instructions for forging property documents. Everything they've exchanged up to now is contained in here." Newman panicked, thinking to himself, "How did that brat find the letters I had hidden in the wall?" Lloyd smiled as if reading his thoughts. "That's right. In the novel, Habil later discovered them too." He remembered the scene of Po Dong scampering outside Newman's door. "Last night I had asked Po Dong to fetch them." Arcus's expression darkened. He leaned back in his chair after reading the entire message. Lloyd stood below, confident. Just like in the novel, he is an honest man. Others would have been shouting to execute him on the spot. "I'm sorry, but an honest leader and a good leader are two very different things." Without waiting, Lloyd continued, "If you're worried about how to get rid of him, Father, I have a proposal." Arcus hesitantly asked, "Oh, really, what is it?" Lloyd said seriously, "We release a very aggressive rat on him. If the rat injures him, expel him from these lands. If not, demote him to a rank-and-file soldier and give him a chance to atone." Voices rose in surprise. "A rat? Why would there be a rat here? There's no way Sir Newman could be harmed by a rat." Hearing this, Arcus slowly understood. "Ah, I see. Dispense justice with minimal punishment. Give him a chance to repent while still serving as a deterrent." Bayan, standing nearby, approved. "A wise decision, merciful and transparent to everyone." Arcus nodded. "Very well, we'll follow your suggestion." Lloyd looked down and asked, "Sir Newman, do you object?" On the losing side, he had only one reply: "No, thank you for your mercy, sir." Lloyd looked at him coldly. Merciful. He briefly wondered, if he forgave the offender, would they make amends in return? In his imagination, a man laughed menacingly. "This fool has a soft heart. No way. They'll only be more determined to take advantage of your kindness." Back in reality, Newman grinned smugly. "You will regret this decision. Baron Frontera, I will surely take revenge on both you and this idiot." Lloyd shattered his fantasy. "Oh my, it's good to see you still smiling. But I'm afraid that's your last smile." "What did you say?" Newman stammered. Lloyd gently handed the red sunflower seed to Po Dong, ignoring him. "What do you mean, you idiot?" Once the seed was delivered, Lloyd quickly tossed Po Dong into the air. His face flared with lethal intent. "The best way to beg for forgiveness is nothing at all." Po Dong took the seed and chewed it voraciously. Its body swelled in midair. Arcus and Marbella widened their eyes. Habilus Rahan and Bayan were also astonished. Po Dong's growing bulk alarmed the crowd. When his form reached its maximum size, Lloyd immediately fled the impact area. Newman gaped, unable to make a sound. Po Dong plummeted down. Crash, dust filled the air. From a distance, Lloyd stood posed at the rim of the crater created by Po Dong's landing. "I've already dug your grave." He feigned regret. "I feel sorry for you." Then he raised a finger and smiled in satisfaction. "Expelling him like this will permanently solve the problem of dealing with this scourge on our land." After some time, in front of Marquis Frontera's estate, Po Dong was concentrating on digging something. He was constantly stepping from right to left as he moved, diligently digging a trench that ran around the village. Habilus Rahan wondered, "What is Sir Po Dong doing?" Loy smiled and answered, "The kid is preparing to expand the roads." He remembered the scrawny, sickly soldiers from before. Surprisingly, those frail engineers had now begun to work hard. Those engineers were now muscular and working diligently. Loy recalled the past. In ancient times, there was a realm called Rome. The people there loved roads, and they created a road system called the Appian Way. He turned back and gave instructions. From now on, we will build it, starting from the Baron's manor up to the eastern hillside. Habila Srahan still wondered why it was just a single road. Loy cut him off, just watch quietly. He smiled confidently, revealing his true intention. The reach of this land will soon skyrocket. Habil asked a question that caught his attention. Young master, where did you learn how to do all these things? Citing everything he had done from past to present, Habil pressed on. You came up with a heating system we had never heard of, and even summoned something that looked like ancient high-level magic. How did you do that? He looked at Lloyd skeptically, eyes unwavering. Are you really our young master, Loy? A red notification panel suddenly appeared. Warning. Habil is currently suspicious of your identity. He looked at the notice board and broke out in a cold sweat. Habil looked at Loy with a determined gaze. He stood motionless, tense, and anxious. When I read this character in the novel, I immediately knew he would discover that a stranger had appeared in the Viscount's son's body. Loy remembered Habil's cold-blooded moments. If it was this person, drawing a sword was quite possible. But don't worry, I had already prepared a move for such a case. He, with his disagreeable face, said, I have studied things that no one knows. Why, can't I do that? Special skill, stubbornness. Habil, bewildered, recalled Loy's former self. No one knew, but the young master used to only drink. He raised his voice with stubborn words. Are you watching me 24 hours a day? You're not, are you? It's true I was a bastard before, but do you know what I've been doing? No. Right. Habil shifted the subject. So how do you intend to explain the summoning? That would be difficult even for mages with 20 years' experience. Lloyd didn't flinch and pressed forward. What about you? How can you channel energy so adeptly at only 20 years old? You didn't learn from anyone else, did you? You're a genius. Habil shyly denied it. No, I don't think I'm a genius. The other pushed his advantage, his face contorted. If you can be a genius, why can't I? What if I suddenly became a genius summoner? Hearing that, Habil stood motionless, speechless. He turned and walked away, his tone confident. If you have nothing else to say, I'll be going. I have some things to check. Special skill, stubbornness, rapid-fire dialogue. Loy walked on, anxious thoughts running through his head. Did he understand? He'll understand, surely, it's fine. He approached the unfinished structure ahead. Sir Bayan, please oversee the arrangements for me while I'm away. Understood, don't worry. Habil also stepped forward and offered, I'll go with you. It's my responsibility to look after the young master. Where are we going? Loy, puzzled, replied, why state the obvious? Of course you should come along too. He smiled and announced the next stop on the trip, somewhere far away to collect unpaid bills. Dusk fell over a small, remote town in the territory. Outside a particular room. Inside, an angry man slammed the table and swore. Damn it. A blue-haired man clutched his head in frustration, unable to believe he'd lost so much money. I'll make those bastards pay. Towards the con man who scams his way across territories. A large man stepped forward. Isn't that how ordinary gambling works? That's the money you've earned so far, isn't it? He warned in a threatening tone. Furthermore, if you can't pay me in my capacity as your escort, I'll leave now. Towards panicked and protested. I can still pay you. I'll pay you more, so don't go anywhere. The escort repeated once more, please remember that I will leave if I don't receive the money on time. Towards grimaced as he considered his next plan. He could only make money by conning people again. Many were looking for him, so he had to flee immediately. Suddenly a voice rang out from somewhere. Oh, are you talking about me? Lloyd kicked the door open and strode in. Towards sprang up from his chair in surprise. What's the matter with you? Lloyd replied calmly. Ah, right, you don't know what I look like. Lloyd Frontera. You'll know immediately if I introduce myself like that, won't you? Tord stood there, mouth agape, when he heard the name. The escort, sensing something was amiss, asked, should I kill him? Tords panicked and urged, no, run away quickly. The escort quickly grabbed Tords, prepared to flee, and leapt out the window. He landed after the jump, and Tords screamed in panic. His expression suddenly turned gray, as the silhouette of a blue-haired knight appeared before him. Habilas Rehan grabbed his sword and swung it across to block the way. He ordered sternly, hand him over and leave at once. If you refuse, we'll consider you an accomplice. Habil recalled the exact instruction young Master Lloyd had given. They will flee through the window into the alley, so wait there. The escort set Tords down and looked at Habil with a murderous glare. Energy around him began to envelop his body. That little brat. He raised his hand and formed a dark orb. From the window, Lloyd looked down and thought to himself, Habil, you've lost the Marquis and are seeking revenge. You fought Tords' guard, the fraud you uncovered. He remembered the passage in the novel. That was the first dark mage Habil encountered, and he had to struggle against gravitational magic. Back in the present, Lloyd grinned slyly and looked down, exactly as in the book. Below, the escort hurled the dark orb toward Habil. Habil did not step back and raised his sword to block the blow. Suddenly, energy radiated out from them, expanding into a large mass that enveloped his entire body. The escort smirked triumphantly and reached out, just as I predicted. You're going to die. He clenched his fist and shouted. The gravity from within the sphere began to press Habil down. Lloyd remembered that in the novel, when fighting that bastard, Habil was then only an advanced sword specialist. But the escort suddenly panicked. Habil activated the magic heart, dispelling the gravitational energy inside. Now Habil had the magic heart with 3 rings. He quickly sliced the orb in half. After the move, Habil asked calmly, what was that just now? Gravity control magic. The escort broke out in a cold sweat, rendered speechless by the sight. He then turned his back and ran. This wasn't in the contract. Tords panicked, trying to stop him. Hey, you bastard. Habil stepped forward to block him. Do you realize how serious the crime of defrauding a noble is? Tords backed away in fear and fell into several crates. Oof. Habil raised his sword coldly. I'll chop off your legs so you can crawl to the court. Oof, the blade was about to swing when a voice cut in. Stop, Lloyd stepped in front of Tords, scolding, are you out of your mind? You'll be punished if he ends up at the court. Habil froze. He looked surprised by Lloyd's resolute gaze. Has this guy suddenly become sympathetic? In the darkness of the small town, within the Vudinia territory, Tords sat trembling, tightly bound to a chair. Lloyd looked at his timid demeanor. He shook his head helplessly, then smiled reassuringly. Hey, don't be afraid. He spoke soothingly. Everyone has moments in life when they grow greedy. Given the chance, they'll go for a big score. He smiled gently. Beheading you would be overkill. I won't let the court know about this. Tords stammered, so you will spare me. Lloyd propped his hand on his chin, grinning broadly. No complaints. Of course that's what you deserve. Isn't that what life is all about? Tords grew even more terrified upon hearing that. Lloyd switched into capitalist mode. I have one more condition before I forgive you. Tords rejoiced. Please tell me, sir, anything will do. Lloyd took a sheet of paper from his pocket and pushed it forward. It's simple. Just sign this contract and it's done. Tords looked at the paper on the table, full of suspicion. What kind of contract is this? Lloyd explained, trying to reassure him. It's just a normal employment contract. Of course I'll pay you a salary. Then he shattered his hopes with another line. But 80% of your wages will be deducted to repay the debt. Tords looked very displeased, but didn't dare to speak. Lloyd nonchalantly stated the term. The debt will be paid off after 520 years. The words struck Tords like a blow. He panicked, his face contorting. Looking at the man before him, Habil Asrahan silently confirmed to himself. I knew it. He didn't come to sympathize or forgive. Lloyd smiled slyly, thinking, do you think I'm crazy enough to kill someone who owes me money? I would never accept a loss like that. He pictured himself draining Tords' life. I'll savor every last bit of what remains of him. Tords stammered a protest. How can you present such an unreasonable contract? Lloyd remained cold. Oh, is that so? Suddenly, he shifted to a menacing expression. Then we'll simply grab your wrist and make you sign. Let's take this to court. After the threat, he sobbed and signed the contract. Dawn was breaking. In the forest, the 3 of them caught a ride with a merchant. Sitting next to Tords, Habil said, I've received a bit of money from that fellow. There won't be any problem paying the interest for a few months. Lloyd heard this and bristled. Huh, what do you mean? All this money will go to labor costs. I've calculated it. 30 soldiers won't be enough. Lloyd bristled at that. Huh, what do you mean? All this money will be spent on labor costs. I've done the math. 30 soldiers aren't enough. He fell silent for a moment, thinking, would anyone apply after the notice is posted? Maybe they think I look like an idiot, so they're put off. A few days later, at the Frontera domain, a notice was placed in front of the manor, recruiting workers at a salary of 20 gold taels. For more information, please visit the Baron's residence. Villagers formed a long line waiting to be interviewed. Lloyd looked puzzled. Oh, they don't hate me. Habil replied, I'm sure they do, but you offered a reasonable explanation and set an appropriate time frame to build Ondon cheaply. I thought you would punish a traitor like me. You might even be called Habil. He looked at Lloyd seriously. A capable, trustworthy man. That's the kind of person you said he should become. Lloyd couldn't believe his ears, thinking to himself, that's all. Is that it? The man at the front of the line stepped forward. Young master, where's the employment contract? Lloyd stammered, you have to sign it, of course. But the man smiled. No, not at all. First of all, I want to thank you. My children usually catch colds whenever the weather turns cold, but thanks to you, this year I don't have to worry because we have Ondon. He bowed in gratitude. Thank you very much, sir. Lloyd replied shyly, oh, is that so? It's nothing, I'm just satisfying my own greed. I'm so ashamed. The man seized the opportunity and continued. Young master, I have relatives in a territory called Dracona. They were asking if you could build there. Lloyd inwardly rejoiced. Here it is, the first step toward a great future. He smiled smugly and calculated. I didn't build Onden for nothing. I'll hike the price because of travel costs and drain them of their money. He kept his sly smile and nodded. Of course, but it will cost a good sum to get there. Habil looked at Lloyd's helpless face, that crude expression again. Seeing that look of satisfaction, he realized. He built Onden just for this reason, didn't he? Then he turned to the construction behind them, wondering to himself, what about the road up the mountain? After the interview, the two of them climbed the mountain. Habil Lloyd called, "Yes, young master." He smiled and spoke about the mountain's future. Sooner or later it will be stripped bare. Habil, puzzled, asked, what do you mean? Loy explained. Onden consumes a great deal of resources. The trees here won't last much longer. Habil widened his eyes in astonishment, about to continue. Then if you know that, young master, why do you still? Loy calmly cut him off. That's why we'll cancel construction of that road. He pointed to the trench Po Dong had dug and explained. At the end of the line, we'll mine coal and then sell it at a high price. If we get high satisfaction ratings, others won't be able to resist. Loy laughed wildly. Of course our people will get a discount, but only a little, just a little. Seeing that, Habil couldn't help but feel contempt. How unfair and petty. Reading his thoughts, Loy turned and asked, do you think I'm unfair and petty? If we don't do that, do you think we could pay off the debts of this territory? Habil was at a loss for words. Then he slowly nodded. I agree, that's the best way for now. Habil Asrahan warned solemnly. The Viscount doesn't know about the bituminous coal, so he won't be at ease. He kept warning that even the other Viscounts had tried again and again. But Loy cut in. I know it will collapse because of the weak ground. He smiled confidently, but I can do it. Loy recalled techniques from his previous world and modern excavation technology. He had knowledge of the shield method. He raised the shovel high and ordered, let's go, we have a lot of work to do. Habil was still perplexed by what he'd said. The shield method, another technology I don't know about? He glanced at Lloyd's back and quietly put his faith in this completely different young master. Back at the still unfinished tunnel, deep inside the mound of earth and rock at the tunnel entrance, darkness enveloped the whole shaft. Suddenly, a monstrous foot appeared in the dim light. From the feet to the whiskers, they gradually revealed themselves, followed by blazing red eyes. They sequentially exposed their entire bodies, ant-like monsters, as numerous as the Mongol hordes, waiting in the cellar. Back in the present, Loy prepared to create something. He twisted his hand, a summoning magic circle appearing, shot magic into the air and shouted loudly. Luxury condominiums, Gangnam District. A green light shot up into the sky, reached the clouds, then slowly descended. With a whoosh, a high-rise building landed behind Loy, who was striking an ostentatiously cool pose. Back in reality, he sighed. Writing the plans and dreaming he had that kind of cool skill. Scribble, scribble. He traced beams of light on the paper with his hand. This is taking too long. Intermediate Design Skill 1, Optional Skill, Sketch Floor Plans. Loy sighed and leaned back. I wish I could summon 100 zombie workers without having to pay them. A notification popped up. If you don't like it, draw it yourself by hand. Seeing the notification, Loy jumped up and continued drawing. No, this is a really cool skill. He remembered the previous fight. Because of Newman's scandal, he had received 630 affinity points, thanks to favorable impressions from the Countess, Habil, Bayan, and others. He poured them all into upgrading skills. Basic Design ranks 2, 3, and 10 into Intermediate Design rank 1. The Optional Skill Residency Capability Index and Base Measurement ranks 2, 3, and 10 into Intermediate Measurement rank 1. And the Optional Skills Land Prospecting, Construction Cost, and Soil Depth. He was able to acquire these skills. Loy stepped up to the basement blocked by rubble. And we'll have to dig here now. His eyes lit up as he activated the skill. The Intermediate Measurement and Earth Probing skill let Loy see the interior passages in detail. The skill only reaches 5 meters, but that's enough to find a safe route. After checking, he stood thinking. The problem is how to dig this spot as quickly as possible. Digging by hand would take too long and would quickly exhaust them. Loy remembered Po Dong lying bedridden. The kid had fallen ill because of the road system project. Even if he recovered, it would still be dangerous because the kid was too big. He set his face seriously and considered the last option. As expected, I have no other choice. Loy opened the system panel and chose to draw random fictional creatures. I have enough affinity points. Random draw for fictional creatures, starting. 1 pull costs 70 affinity points. Current points, 119. The machinery sounded again. Loy sat dazed, waiting. Suddenly, a bow and a small body popped out of the magic circle. A lively little creature popped out and fell to the ground with a thud without Lloyd catching it, its forehead swelling into a bump. She cried a few times, "Bayo, Bayo." He looked at the creature below, inwardly scoffing. What is this? Is it meant for assassination? Is it poisonous? It looks completely useless. But he suddenly remembered that Po Dong looked like this at first too, so it might be useful. He asked, will you also grow huge if you eat sunflower seeds? Do you also have a maxed out skill? Bayo nodded proudly and repeatedly. Loy asked her to perform. Can you show me your skill? Bayo smiled and agreed. Several weeks later, in front of the cave on the mountain, Bayo transformed into a rock-crushing machine. Step 1. Bayo will become gigantic and consume all the soil and rock in front of the protective equipment area. She chewed the rocks contentedly without a complaint. Bayo's skill, Earth Scooping Level 1. Loy stood in front and ordered Habil get ready. She raised her hindquarters, trembling. Bayo's skill, Earth Digestion Level 1. Habil was drenched in sweat and assumed his stance. Bayo fired bright red steel rods at him. Step 2. Bayo heats the steel until it's red hot. Bayo's skill, Steel Projection Level 1. Habil solemnly sliced the incoming steel bars in two. Step 3. Habil will cut the steel. Deep inside, the blacksmith team was also hard at work. Step 4. Build a structure capable of supporting the ground. Habil Asrahan inwardly felt powerless about his current task. Why must a knight like him scrape the droppings of a giant snake? Step 5. Practical inspection. Loy, full of vigor, shouted, well done, let's move on. The workers he had hired obeyed orders, continued the work, moved down into the shaft, and then pushed forward again. Loy was panting from lack of oxygen and felt a little dizzy. If we hadn't connected the pipes, we probably would have lost consciousness. Habil stepped forward and announced, young Master Loy, I think it's better if we go outside now. You should rest like the other workers. He turned away to refuse. Fool, I am the person in charge. As the one in charge, I need to oversee the operation. Loy seriously thought about the old world. In Korea, those in charge were all loudmouths. Some didn't even show up on site. I will never be like them. I will oversee the operation. He activated his measurement skill and detected something. Loy looked toward the passage ahead. I see it. Seeing the dark-colored rocks, he realized they were bituminous coal. Seeing the find, Loy shouted to everyone in the shaft. We're almost done, keep it up. Bayo stepped forward and rubbed his cheek. Thank you, because of you we worked 10 times faster. Loy turned back and announced. Listen, when we reach the coal seam, Trung Star will remove the protective covering and expand the space. He warned seriously, this is a dangerous task, don't let your guard down. Thud, the sound from the pile of earth and rocks behind drew Loy's attention. Another thud. He trembled, bewildered. What's that? The ground here is very solid and shouldn't collapse. He widened his eyes. He used the ground probing skill. Loy's measurement skill revealed something. A hole. It hadn't been there before. Suddenly the hole widened, astonishing him. Suddenly, a monstrous ant burst out of the heap of earth and stone. Startling Loy, the giant ant lunged forward, preparing to attack. Habil, swift as lightning, grabbed his weapon and rushed forward, slicing its mandibles cleanly in two in the blink of an eye. Seizing the opportunity, Loy raised his shovel and struck straight at the head, finishing off the giant ant. One blow smashed its head to a pulp, and it lay motionless. Calming down after the scare, Loy thought, has something appeared that wasn't mentioned in the novel? No, wait. Why did it feel so easy? This ant must have a colony. Just then, a mass of glowing red eyes turned toward the two of them, and the ants surged forward en masse for no apparent reason. Loy immediately ordered, everyone get out. The people in the basement screamed in panic and fled. Habil stood blocking the way, cleaving the giant ants that rushed at him in two. Loy was astonished by their numbers, thinking to himself, how many are there? 200, 1,000. The territory will be lost if they swarm out. He turned and looked back at Habil fighting hard. Can Habil hold them, stop them? No, it's impossible, we're short on oxygen. Looking toward the people who had escaped, Loy hatched a plan. The mine tunnel we built can't be destroyed unless explosives are used. If this place collapses, we must act quickly. What should I do? What should I do? Seeing him freeze, Habil lunged forward and punched him square in the face. Snap out of it. Young master, you can't panic. Loy snapped back angrily. I'm not panicking, I'm thinking. Habil, blocking the ant's strikes, shouted, then you need to come up with something quickly. He glared and repeated once more, hurry up. Loy clenched his teeth, thinking, ant tunnels bitumen the earth. The light bulb in his head seemed to dim. Suddenly, energy surged. That was it. He snatched the torch from the wall with a grunt. He ordered sternly, we'll attack head-on, we'll go through the tunnel with the ants. Habil lunged forward. It sounded foolish, but he still cut down the ants in front of him, thinking, there must be a reason. The two of them moved forward together, toward the giant swarm of ants. Let's go.